Wealthy rancher shelters a widow and her child he never expected they'd change his life forever. Before we go further, please ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories like this one. The sky cracked open with a roar, spilling rain across the empty Texas backroads. Wind howled through the mesquite trees as thunder rumbled like distant cannon fire. Clayton Hayes, behind the wheel of his dusty pickup, squinted through the smeared windshield. He was headed home from the feed store, his coat damp and the passenger seat piled with sacks of grain. Another long day behind him and more waiting tomorrow. As he approached the familiar wooden gate that marked the entrance to Hayes Ranch, his headlights cut through the downpour and landed on something unexpected. An old, dented sedan pulled awkwardly to the side. Its hazard lights blinked weakly in the storm, barely visible through the sheet of rain. Clayton slowed. Inside the car, through fogged-up glass, he saw two figures. A woman in her early 30s sat in the driver's seat, clutching the steering wheel, her eyes darting toward his truck. In the back, a little girl curled up in a blanket, her face pale and frightened. Clayton put the truck in park, grabbed his hat, and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit him like cold nails, soaking his jacket within seconds. He approached the driver's side window, knocked gently, and waited. The woman cracked the window an inch, her voice cautious. "We're fine," she said, not meeting his gaze. Clayton nodded once. "Didn't ask if you were. Just noticed you're stuck in the middle of a thunderstorm near cattle country. Roads aren't safe in this weather." Her eyes flicked to her daughter, then back to him. "We just need a little time. The engine overheated. It'll cool down soon. You got somewhere to go?" Silence. The rain filled the pause between them. Clayton waited, his posture calm, patient. "I'm Anna," she finally said. "This is my daughter, Sophie. We are figuring things out." He didn't pry. Just glanced at the thickening clouds overhead. "There's a guest house just past that gate," he said. "Dry. Got heat. You're welcome to stay the night. Just tonight." Anna hesitated, searching his face for signs of hidden intent. But his eyes remained steady, voice firm without pressure. He wasn't trying to rescue anyone. Just offering shelter. She turned, looked at Sophie, still shivering, hugging a worn teddy bear, and something in her cracked. She opened the door. Clayton stepped back, gave them space. Anna bundled her daughter in a thin coat and climbed out, keeping one hand on Sophie's shoulder, the other clutching a torn canvas bag. Clayton led them to his truck. They climbed in without speaking, steam rising from their soaked clothes. As he drove the short distance up the gravel path to the main ranch house, lightning flashed behind them, illuminating the vast outlines of barns and pastures. Anna stared out the window, quiet. Sophie leaned against her, already half asleep. The truck came to a stop beside a small, standalone cabin near the main house. Clayton stepped out first, unlocked the door, and turned on the lights. Warmth poured out from inside. A space modest but clean, a fire already set in the hearth. Anna stood in the doorway, dripping. "Why are you helping us?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. Clayton didn't answer right away. He simply said, "Storm's bad tonight. Nobody should face it alone." She held his gaze for a moment, then stepped inside with Sophie. Thunder rolled behind them as Clayton closed the door. Morning broke quietly over Hayes Ranch. Golden light spilled through the slats of the guest house blinds, dancing across wooden floors still damp near the doorway. Anna stirred awake, her daughter curled beside her, wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of cedar. Then came the scent, rich, familiar, almost startling. Coffee, and something warm and savory. She blinked, sat up, and listened. No storm. Just birds, the faint creak of floorboards, and the low hum of life somewhere nearby. She stepped out of the small bedroom, smoothing her shirt as she entered the open living area. On the table sat a modest spread. Scrambled eggs, toast, jam, and a pot of coffee still steaming. A folded napkin rested beside the plate. It wasn't extravagant, but it was thoughtful and unexpected. "Morning," came a voice from the door. Anna turned. Clayton stood just outside, leaning against the frame, arms crossed. Hat still on, expression unreadable. "I didn't hear you come in," she said. "Didn't want to wake you," he replied, then glanced toward the small boots sitting near the door. "Left some breakfast." "Hope that's all right?" She nodded slowly. "Thank you." Before she could say more, a thump interrupted them. Sophie, now awake, had discovered a pair of old cowboy boots too large for her small feet. She clomped around near the window, grinning, one foot dragging slightly as the boots flopped. Clayton watched, lips twitching at the corners. Boots might be a size too big. She's making it work, Anna said with a faint smile. A quiet moment passed before Clayton spoke again. I've got a man coming to look at your car. Should be by this afternoon. Until then, you're welcome to stay. Anna hesitated, unsure how long she could accept kindness without feeling like a burden. We won't overstay. Didn't say you would. He gave a polite nod. You ever seen the land? She shook her head. Clayton stepped back and gestured toward the open path behind the house. Come on. I'll show you. Anna followed, leaving Sophie to play under the porch with a barn cat that had appeared out of nowhere. The path opened into rolling fields, rows of fencing stretching far into the distance. Horses grazed in the distance, and chickens scattered near a weathered coop. A pair of longhorns stood motionless under a tree, their silhouettes sharp against the morning sun. It's quiet out here, Anna said. That's the idea, Clayton replied. They walked slowly, boots crunching against the gravel. Anna took it in, the space, the silence, the rhythm of it all. It felt different from the chaos she'd known lately. There was peace in the stillness. You run this place alone? She asked. He nodded. My brother and I built it up. He passed 3 years ago. Since then, it's just me. Anna looked down at her hands, then up again. My husband died last month. Car accident. I couldn't keep the house. No job, no family to turn to. Clayton didn't offer sympathy. Just walked beside her, letting her speak, letting the wind carry what she needed to release. I didn't expect to end up here, she added. Texas wasn't even on the map. You didn't end up here, he said simply. You passed through a gate. That's a choice. She met his eyes then, and for a brief second, something passed between them. Not romance. Not yet. But understanding. Recognition. They returned to the porch as Sophie waved from the steps, holding a piece of toast in one hand and a kitten in the other. Anna sat beside her daughter, heart still heavy but breathing easier. Clayton tipped his hat. I'll be out back. Holler if you need anything. She watched him walk away, steady, quiet, always looking ahead. Maybe she thought this wasn't just a stop on the road. Maybe it was the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. The days began to shape themselves. Mornings brought the clatter of dishes, the smell of biscuits baking, and sunlight breaking across the hardwood floor. Anna had slipped into the rhythm of the ranch without announcement or expectation. She rose early, tying her hair back, sleeves rolled high as she stirred batter and scrubbed pans with a quiet diligence that spoke more than words. Clayton noticed. He said little, but nothing escaped his gaze. He saw how she made things run smoother, not with authority, but care. Fences were still mended, horses fed, supplies hauled, but now the house had a pulse. It was in the folded laundry, the warm meals, the sound of laughter skipping across the porch. Sophie had claimed the barn as her kingdom. Animals once indifferent now followed her footsteps, goats nudged her for treats, chickens scattered at her sprint, and a small pony named Dusty became her favorite companion. Her joy was unfiltered, unburdened, the way only a child's could be. Clayton, from the shadows of the barn or across the yard, often caught himself smiling at her antics before quickly looking away. Then came the fall. It was a crisp afternoon. The sky clear, the fields buzzing with life. Sophie, more confident than careful, tried to stand on Dusty's saddle while giggling at her own bravery. Her balance gave way in an instant. She tumbled sideways, landing hard in the dirt. Silence followed. Anna, a few feet away hanging sheets on the line, screamed her name. But Clayton was already moving. Sprinting across the field, boots pounding the earth, half forgotten in the wind. He reached Sophie first, dropping to his knees. Breathe, sweetheart. Just breathe, he murmured, checking her arms, brushing dirt from her cheek. Tears welled in her eyes, but she nodded. Nothing broken, only bruised. Anna arrived seconds later, heart racing. Clayton stood and gently lifted Sophie into his arms. That evening, the house was quieter. Sophie rested on the couch, leg propped, sipping warm cider. Anna hovered nearby. Clayton lit the fire, then sat, closer than usual. You scared me today, he said softly, glancing toward Sophie. Sorry, she mumbled. He smiled. Next time you want to ride like a rodeo star, we'll do it together. Deal? She nodded, half grinning. Later, after Sophie drifted off, the air grew lighter. Cards appeared on the table. A deck, worn and faded, pulled from a drawer neither had touched in weeks. Anna dealt the first hand. Clayton leaned back in his chair, watching her with cautious ease. "You ever lose badly?" she teased. He raised an eyebrow. "I lose quietly." They played into the night. The fireplace crackled behind them. Laughter, real, unforced, returned to the room like an old friend. In the soft orange glow, walls faded. "You mentioned your brother once," Anna said, her tone gentle. Clayton stared at the fire. "Yeah, Eli. Served overseas. Didn't make it home." She waited. "He was the dreamer," he continued. "Said we'd turn this land into a family ranch. I kept the land. Lost the rest." Anna said nothing, but her hand brushed his for a second too long as she collected the cards. A silence followed, not awkward, but understood. Trust wasn't declared. It was built, brick by brick, over moments like these. As the night deepened and the wind stirred outside, the ranch house no longer felt like a place to pass through. It carried warmth, memory, and now possibility. The next morning, when Clayton came in for breakfast, he didn't knock. And Anna didn't look surprised. The wind had shifted. It was subtle at first. Anna moved through the kitchen with the same quiet grace, and Clayton still rose before dawn, feeding horses before coffee. But something in the air had changed, something unspoken. It started with a phone call. Anna stood near the guest house window, sunlight streaking across the floor as she answered. Her voice was low, careful. She glanced over her shoulder, not realizing Clayton was outside, just beyond the open porch screen, replacing a cracked post. He paused when he heard his name. "No, we're not staying permanently. He's been kind, but it's not our home," she said softly. "You have a job? Really? An apartment too?" Clayton didn't wait to hear more. He straightened, turned away, and busied himself with the hammer, though the wood grain swam before his eyes. That evening he didn't come by. Anna noticed the absence. Dinner felt colder without his quiet presence at the table. Sophie asked twice where he was. Anna gave vague answers, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Later that night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Anna stepped onto the porch and looked out toward the barn lights. The land she'd come to know, the sky that had once felt endless, suddenly felt like a ticking clock. She had to decide. The offer was generous. A former coworker had heard about her situation, had a restaurant position open, and knew someone with a small rental. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, independent, safe. She sat on the porch for a long while, eyes fixed on the stars. The next morning, Clayton appeared at the door for breakfast as usual, but the warmth between them had cooled. Anna served him coffee, and they exchanged polite words, nothing more. By dusk, she made up her mind. They sat down to dinner in silence. Sophie picked at her food, sensing something was off. Anna folded her hands in her lap, took a breath, and said it, "We'll be leaving in the morning." Clayton's knife stopped halfway through a biscuit. He didn't look up. "There's a job," she continued. "A place to stay. It's what we need right now." Sophie dropped her fork. "But I don't want to go." Anna reached for her hand, but the child pulled away, eyes wide and wet. "I like it here. I like the horses. And the cats. Anu." Her voice cracked. "I like him." Clayton still said nothing. He stood, quietly collected his plate, and walked to the sink. The sound of running water filled the silence. Anna helped Sophie pack that night. The little girl cried herself to sleep, clutching the stuffed bear Clayton had repaired weeks ago. Anna sat on the edge of the bed, her chest tight. She told herself this was right, that leaning on kindness too long came with risks she couldn't afford. Just before dawn, they loaded the car. The sky was still dark, the air crisp with dew. Anna shut the trunk gently. Sophie climbed into the back seat, her eyes red, face pressed to the window. Clayton stood on the porch, hands in his pockets, shoulders still. Anna met his gaze across the gravel. "Thank you," she said, "for everything." He gave a single nod. No words came. The engine turned over. The tires rolled across the dirt. As the car pulled away, Clayton stayed frozen in place. His jaw clenched. His eyes followed the red taillights until they disappeared behind the trees. Then he turned, stepped inside, and shut the door. Behind him, the house was quiet once more. But not the same. The ranch had grown quiet again. 3 weeks had passed since Anna and Sophie left, but their absence hadn't settled into the background. It echoed. Clayton moved through his days like clockwork. Feed the cattle. Mend the gate. Oil the hinges. Work filled the hours, but the silence filled the spaces in between. He didn't admit it, but he lingered longer by the porch now, watching the road without meaning to. The guest house sat untouched, its curtains drawn, the beds made but cold. Even the animals seemed less lively, as if sensing the energy had drained from the place. One morning, under a sky that promised rain but delivered only haze, Clayton was in the barn repairing a broken latch when a sound pierced the stillness. Laughter. High-pitched, familiar, unmistakable. He straightened, heart skipping. For a moment he thought he'd imagined it. Then came footsteps. Light, hurried. Sophie. She tore around the corner, arms outstretched, the same oversized boots flopping on her feet. Her smile was wide, eyes bright, and behind her trailed the dust of the gravel road. Clayton dropped the tool in his hand. Before he could move, she collided with him, wrapping herself around his waist. He caught her instinctively. "You came back," he whispered. She nodded, face buried in his shirt. "I miss Dusty, and you." His gaze lifted. Anna stood by the truck, the passenger door still open. Wind tugged at her sweater, her hair loose around her face. She didn't smile right away. Her eyes held something softer, relief, maybe, or hesitation. "The job didn't last," she said, her voice carrying easily across the yard. "Hours got cut. The place wasn't right." She stepped forward slowly. But even if it had worked out, it wouldn't have been home. Clayton didn't speak. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the tired lines beneath her eyes, the uncertainty in her stance, the hope she didn't dare voice. Then, without another word, he set Sophie down and walked toward her. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need answers. He stopped inches from her and simply said, "Welcome home." No declarations, no conditions, just truth. That evening, the lights in the guest house glowed again. Smoke drifted from the chimney. In the main house, dinner wasn't just a meal, it was a reunion. Sophie sat at the table, swinging her feet, chatting about barn cats and a dream she had about teaching the goats to dance. Clayton listened with a quiet grin while Anna ladled soup into bowls, her movements relaxed, familiar. There was no talk of tomorrow, no urgency to define the moment. They laughed more easily, moved more closely. The distance that had once guarded them now felt unnecessary. As the fire crackled and the dishes cleared, Clayton brought out a deck of cards. Sophie begged to learn the game. Anna leaned into the back of her chair, tea in hand, watching the two of them like a scene she'd forgotten she could belong to. Outside, the wind had settled. The stars hung low over the ranch, unbothered by the shifting of plans and paths. Inside, warmth pulsed through the old walls, not just from the fire, but from the unspoken promise they'd stepped into. No one said it aloud, but they all felt it. They weren't passing through anymore. They were exactly where they were meant to be. By late spring, the ranch no longer whispered with silence. It pulsed with life. Laughter drifted across the fields. The creak of swings, the patter of boots, the occasional cry of a goat protesting a child's hug, all blended into the soundtrack of a home reborn. Where once there had been solitude, there was now movement, warmth, and purpose. The guest house had long since become part of the rhythm. Anna's touch could be seen in every corner, the porch lined with flower pots, a chalkboard near the door with reminders and meal plans, and freshly baked bread cooling on the windowsill. Inside the main house, the walls that had once held only silence now held framed moments, photos of Sophie feeding a lamb, Clayton showing her how to lasso, Anna laughing with flour on her nose. But the real transformation stood at the heart of the property. The barn, once dusty and forgotten, had been carefully restored. Its red siding freshly painted, string lights hung like stars beneath the rafters. It had become more than storage, it was a place for gathering, healing, and second chances. Women from neighboring towns, many with children in tow, visited weekly. They found work, comfort, and community in the space Anna had envisioned and Clayton helped build. Today, it was full. Folding chairs stretched in neat rows, the barn bustling with neighbors, friends, and families. Voices overlapped as casseroles were shared, lemonade poured, and children darted between hay bales stacked neatly in the corner. Near the front, a small stage had been raised, draped with simple fabric. A wooden podium stood in the center. Beside it, mounted on the wall, a bronze plaque gleamed in the soft light. Clayton stepped onto the stage as the chatter quieted. He wore a clean Western suit, boots polished, his hat resting on the table nearby. He didn't speak right away, just looked over the faces before him. Some familiar, others new. "Most of you know me," he began, voice steady. "And if you don't, that's all right. What matters more is why we're here." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Anna and Sophie seated in the front row. Anna's eyes met his, bright, brimming. Sophie clung to her hand, the other hand resting against his boot. "This barn used to be nothing more than shelter for tools and feed," he continued. "Now it's something else. Something better. Not because of wood or paint, but because of hearts. Brave ones. Giving ones." He turned, gesturing toward the plaque. "In honor of selfless hearts who give even when they have nothing." For a moment, the room held still. Anna's shoulders trembled as she reached for a tissue. Sophie leaned into her side, smiling up at Clayton like he was the hero of a bedtime story. The applause came slowly, then rose, rolling through the barn like a wave. He stepped down quietly. No need for more words. Anna stood to meet him. Their fingers met, then their palms, hands locking with the kind of certainty that didn't need explanation. Sophie wedged herself between them, taking both their hands, and together they faced the crowd as one. As the sun dipped lower, golden light spilled through the barn doors. Outside, the fields shimmered. Inside, music played softly. Fiddles, steel guitars, a voice singing of home. No fanfare, no spotlight, just family, built not by blood, but by choice. And a ranch that had finally become what it was always meant to be. A place for hearts to land when the world had nowhere else for them to go. If you enjoyed this story, ensure to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing, heartfelt stories like this. Also, let us know where you are watching from, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Mention names of the characters in the story like Clayton, Anna, and little Sophie. What part touched you the most? Have you ever experienced kindness that changed everything? We'd love to hear your story too. Your support helps us bring more inspiring tales to life. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a story that warms the heart and reminds us what truly matters.